Anton here. This episode of All Things Green is brought to you by NextGen Clean Energy Solutions, your sustainable easy button from concept to completion. Welcome to All Things Green. I'm Anton, and today I'm joined by two very special guests. Ivey Williams and Eva Coe are students from the Laurel School and are graduates from the first ever environmental justice semester. Gals, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much for having us.
We had your teacher, the director of the environmental justice semester, Angela Yeager, on in an earlier episode, and you guys are part of the very first environmental justice semester. What were your main takeaways, and did it shift your overall career path?
I can go first with that one.
Sure.
I think my main takeaways and the career path aspect kind of go hand in hand. I knew going into the semester that I was very interested in social justice and creating equity in the world, and that I saw just a lot of corruption around me. And I think my mindset going in was more like, yes, environmentalism is a huge issue, but, take care of people first. But my main takeaway, I'd say, is how intersectional those issues are and how you can't take care of the environment without taking care of people. You can't hurt the environment without hurting people, and vice versa. So I think that's been huge in thinking about my future career, that if I want to help people, helping the environment and changing environmental policy is a huge part of that. I think another takeaway, since you mentioned our teacher, Yeager, I think something that we all learned from her is that to make change, you have to be really persistent. If you really care about something, you can't stop after getting knocked down once, and you can't just lay back and let opportunities come to you. I think I've definitely developed more of a hunger for activism and change making, and more of a willingness to go up to people and network and make connections.
Well, Eva, what about you? You started off maybe being interested in more journalism, as we were talking at the green room before, but you're thinking a slightly different career path now?
Yeah, everything Ivy said I completely agree with. I also thought as environmentalism is kind of a concentrated separate issue from everything else going on in the world, when it's the exact opposite. The environment and how our climate is treated in government and in society is directly connected with the social justice issues we face today, especially in Cleveland. So that's really made me reconsider where I want my career to go. I know now after the semester that I have to do something that helps the environment, because that's one of the biggest ways that we can solve health issues, solve housing issues, is with that foundation of taking care of our environment. And that kind of leads me into a huge takeaway that I had from this semester, is that community is so vital to change making, and a lot of the core components of what makes a good community also will help us to kind of create a more equitable future. So having that care towards everyone in the community, making sure everyone's voice is heard, being inclusive, taking time, like restorative time, I think is all very important to addressing the issues in the most comprehensive way. And I think we learn that a lot also being out in nature. Those same skills that help you to focus in on each other in nature will be the same skills that we need to take into our policy making. That's kind of why I want to go into environmental law, because I think that policy needs to learn a lesson from those community building skills. So yeah.
I think that's brilliant. Tell me a little bit about some of that work that you mentioned, working on the ground with the action projects that you guys are working on.
Yeah, so I worked, myself and two other students, we worked with the organization ACE, which stands for Action for the Climate Emergency. So our experience was a little bit different because some of the other groups were working with more grassroots or local organizations, but ACE is a pretty powerful, nationwide organization with the mission of empowering youth voices. So that was really cool to know that we were working towards a larger mission and that they had students doing similar work across the nation. That gave us a really hopeful feeling. Also, Shaniqua, who was the Ohio leader of ACE, worked with us, and she's really amazing. So we ended up deciding that we wanted to do something in the realm of legislation. So we found a House Bill 201, which would, if passed, it actually did pass since then, unfortunately.
Didn't pass?
It did.
It did pass.
So if passed, it stops Ohio from adopting California's vehicle emission standards.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So those standards, in a nutshell, basically just give a stronger push towards transition to electric vehicles on a quicker timeline. So we started out by researching a lot about the bill and becoming very knowledgeable about the consequences of emissions that come commonly from cars. Then we created a petition, which we didn't think would get much traction, but we got over 500 signatures, which is pretty good
Superb.
for a few weeks.
Yeah.
So that was really exciting and gave us kind of some momentum for, even if this bill did pass, which it did, just knowing that if we put our minds to it, future legislation, we can work towards advocating for our stance on it. We also wrote an op-ed, which was published in the Plain Dealer, which was super exciting.
Yeah.
And then we got to go to the State House with the rest of our cohort and meet with a senator who we now have as a contact and a resource.
Which senator?
Senator Kent Smith. He's the minority whip in the Ohio Senate.
Yeah. Kent Smith, I really want you to sponsor my bill for stopping the spreading of radioactive oil and gas waste brine.
Kent
So,
Smith, he
just-
follows me on Instagram, so
Okay.
I'll put in a word.
Okay, thank you, Ivy. Eva, tell me a little bit about your action project or even the capstone if you'd like to tell me about that.
Yeah, I mean, they kind of go hand in hand. So
Sure.
first with the action project with the EJ semester, I worked with Redhouse Architecture, and RED of the Redhouse stands for Research, Equity, and Design. And they have multiple projects going on right now. The one in Cleveland is called Biocycler. And a huge environmental issue that Cleveland has been facing for many decades is the issue of lead poisoning, specifically in low-income minority communities. And so Redhouse's vision is to take the architectural waste and the soil that is lead contaminated from those communities, take it to their lab and grow. They're using reishi mushrooms right now, and essentially the mycelium, or like the fungal organism of that mushroom, grows with water and the architectural waste, such as like sawdust, and that is then compressed into a block for building materials.
Wow.
And the mycelium, after it's grown with the lead-contaminated material, captures the lead and makes it biologically unavailable. So then those bricks that are made in processing can be used to rebuild homes that are safe for people to live in, and that also recycle the waste from Cleveland. And also, when you grow the mushrooms, they sequester carbon. So all in all, it's I think carbon negative.
Carbon negative,
Yeah,
yeah.
carbon negative. And so that's what I was working on with Redhouse. I helped them collect samples of soil from around Cleveland. I was in part of their experiment where they were studying different soil samples around different neighborhoods in Cleveland. And we injected mycelium, like liquid mycelium, into each of the samples, and then studied how the lead content was affected after the mycelium was inputted into the sample. And the samples that had mycelium in them came back lead negative, like it wouldn't
Wow.
affect a child who was playing in the soil, and it wouldn't poison anyone. So that was a really impressive and amazing process to be a part of, and I learned so much about how science can be used to kind of combat those issues. And so I helped them with that experiment, and we also helped them with a little bit of like media outreach. We helped them kind of work on some social media posts to get their message out there more, and
Yeah.
to get more people aware of that kind of technology and processing. And then The issue of lead poisoning was really interesting to me because I didn't realize how many ties to social justice it had, because communities that are predominantly affected by lead poisoning were also like redlined after the New Deal. And so those communities since then have just been facing issues that like kind of exacerbate each other. And so in addition to like economic issues, there's that issue of health, and lead poisoning can really affect people so negatively, like neurologically, and it can even make people lose IQ points. It's just a really intense and horrible disease that not a lot of people know about. So right now I'm kind of working with people in the Cleveland community who are addressing that issue, to cover what's being done in Cleveland to gain more awareness for that issue and kind of present the topic as an issue that actually is about environmentalism and social justice.
Yeah. So we have a citizen scientist and a lobbyist here. You gals are going to do great things in our future. But I wanted to touch on a little bit about our last episode. We had Bill and Lynn, investment bankers, and they claimed that young people, millennials, Gen Z, Gen Alpha maybe, they just come out of the womb built different. They come out of the womb having a different set of values. They care about the environment. Obviously, you guys care about the environment. You guys care about activism. You guys are going to be movers and shakers. But what would you say about some of your peers that are less, maybe they feel disenfranchised, or maybe they just feel apathetic to the cause?
Yeah, excuse me. I think that less than us just, coming out like this, I think that it has a lot to do with the media we consume. Social media is so prevalent right now that like our algorithms might show us all the climate disasters that are happening across the world and the social justice current events, but a lot of other people's algorithms show them exactly the opposite and tell them that climate change isn't real, or just a lot of consumerism and just like influencers who are showing off a lot of wealth and extravagant spending can be what's on their feed a lot. So I think that it's really about finding a community where you feel like you have real values and goals and ambitions in common. And I think that is something huge that EJ gave us, is like hope that we are not the only people that care about this, and that we're so much stronger in a group than together. And it's really powerful to be able to have just real meaningful conversations with people on a daily basis that you feel like you can learn so much about the world around you and yourself from. So I would say that that's the biggest advice that I would give to people who feel like maybe climate change or environmental justice isn't an issue for them. I would say find people who are passionate and let yourself be inspired by them and learn from them.
Yeah, Eva, would you corroborate what your peer is saying? I mean, these are apathetic young people. A word that gets tossed around a lot is like black-pilled. Like maybe they feel like there's no way forward, there's no hope. What would you say to your peers that feel like there's no hope in
I think
climate
that's really accurate as to how a lot of people in our generation are feeling. I think there was a huge amount of energy and power in the climate movement, maybe even like a couple years back. But when we saw that politicians and lawmakers were just not really acting as urgently as we were feeling on those issues, a lot of people kind of lost hope.
Yeah.
And a lot of younger generations feel like there's really nothing they can do. And also, like Ivy said, I think it's really easy for us to be stuck in the bubble of our own lives. And social media, while a lot of people argue that it can show you other perspectives, I think inversely it can show you the same thing over and over again, or exactly what you've seen in the past.
Yeah.
And so I think that while young people are firstly losing hope, I think it's also the issue of that it's such a huge issue and it's so easy to look away if you don't want to see it. Like, it's so easy to exist in just this bubble and this echo chamber that you're in. So in addition to all the great points that Ivy made about finding community, I would say also just starting to get engaged with lifestyles that differ from your own. And in that, talking to people at school who live different lifestyles, whose parents have different careers, or going and listening to podcasts about things happening in your community or around the world, just finding information and like being curious and being interested. And like Ivy said, allowing yourself to be inspired by people who are really passionate.
On that note, you guys are planning a summit coming up. Is that right? This is a summit where young people will have the opportunity to come together. Tell me about what it's like to plan a big event like this, and then also tell me about what you guys are going to accomplish at this event.
Yeah, so I would say that it's definitely a bigger project than I've ever taken on. But what's really inspiring and motivating for me is thinking about the kids who will come into it and trying to cultivate the same experience that I had at EJ at the summit in any capacity that I can. Just that feeling of being surrounded by people who care, being surrounded by people who are working towards a solution rather than like experiencing doom and gloom from the situation. And I think that is really empowering for people. So I'm really excited for the summit, and I've been really excited to work with my peers on something like this because we can kind of engineer it to be as interactive and engaging for young people as possible. And the breakout room that I'm working on is talking about the Cleveland Climate Action Plan.
Wow.
So the aim of this breakout room is to educate young people about what their local government is doing, what goals Cleveland is setting, and by what years, what needs to be done to meet these climate goals. For example, Cleveland has a goal of a canopy cover of 30% by 2040. And so students will come into my breakout room and there will be a simulation where they'll have to address the most prominent climate issues that Cleveland is facing and work with their peers and imagine what it's like from both the citizen and the policymaker level as to like local climate change.
I hope Mayor Bibb is making an appearance at the breakout room. Is he?
He is. He's
is
not,
he?
or he's filming a video.
He's filming a video?
Yeah, so
okay.
He's aware that it's happening.
Okay, well that's good.
Yeah.
I hope he does a little more than film a video.
We'll see.
I mean, this is for high school students, right? Tell me about some of the schools that are invited. Is this just like all schools in Northeast Ohio?
Yeah, so we have opened this up to all students in Northeast Ohio from grades 8 through 12. It's a free event, and it's at the Case Think Box April 14th from 11 to 4 p.m. That's a Sunday, so we wanted to pick a day that hopefully people didn't have too much else going on. Eva kind of took the words right out of my mouth. I was gonna say that I'm excited to show people that it doesn't have to be all gloom and doom all the time, nor does it have to be sitting outside or getting muddy all the time. With our breakout rooms, I'm really excited because the ideas for them were born from the different interests that students in the EJ cohort had. So a few of us are on each breakout room. So the one I'm working on is about intersectionality, which Eva touched on in different words earlier. So we're wanting to show off the intersection of social and environmental issues. So like how redlining and lead poisoning and air pollution all intersect. So I'm just excited for students to get to explore the many different sectors of environmentalism and hopefully to get some people interested in joining a future cohort of the EJ semester and getting to experience that, not just for one Sunday.
That is special. Something that my old boss said before she passed away, R.I.P. Teresa Mills. If you're not having fun, you're not doing it right. So I totally love that, and I'm excited to hear about how the semester goes. We'll have to check back in with you guys, and we'll make sure to link that in the show notes about your event. If you gals could wave your magic wand and implement one policy change globally, master of the universe, what would you guys do?
Well, earlier when you suggested this question, I was thinking about it, and something that's been on my mind a lot recently with the election coming up is how much money and sponsorship stops progress from happening, especially in the climate realm.
Wow.
And so I think that one thing I would do would be to first have a limit on how much donation could be given to a campaign in any level of government. And on that same note, I would want to tax corporations with environmental concerns specifically in mind. Like, I would want a sector of how much corporations and businesses are taxed to go to enriching the environment. I would want there to be more of a strict limit on the amount of emissions a company is able to produce, and I would want that all to happen a little bit more rapidly.
Yeah. I think that's really cool. Campaign finance reform is...
Yeah,
that's really cool. I wasn't expecting that. That's a pretty cool answer.
Yeah.
Ivy, wave your magic wand.
Okay. This might be a little bit more vague, but in a similar vein, I think Eve and I are both really interested in the economic factors that contribute to social inequality and climate change. So I would kind of take us back to the 1940s and get some trust busting and like anti-monopoly policies. Because I think of the monopolies back then and wonder if they had anything on like Amazon or Disney, and how those companies are, first of all, emitting so much, but also doing so much to eradicate like the small family businesses that used to be so much more common. So yeah, I would definitely do a lot to lessen the wealth gap and get a more equitable distribution of wealth. I had more to say, but I forgot. So
that's okay.
Yeah, on that same vein of like where we spend our money and like how much private corporations are allowed to receive, I would also have a lot more federal funding for institutions like Redhouse, science that is not focused on fossil fuels or necessarily electric innovation, but natural solutions like using mycelium and using biodegradable products to really solve issues in like restorative ways, I think is really important too.
Yeah. You gals have such big ideas. It's truly a breath of fresh air. We got to start wrapping up the episode, but I would love to hear you guys shout out your friends, your mentors, your peers, your organizations. Ivy, do you want to start?
Sure. I would want to shout out our fellow peers from the EJ cohort and the other students who are working on the summit planning with us, because it's been really great working together as a team and bouncing our ideas off of each other. And I'm really proud of all of the work we're doing as a collective. I'd also like to shout out Chad Stevens from the Sierra Club, who is collaborating with me on the intersectionality breakout room. I heard him speak at another sustainability summit a while back and was really inspired, so I'm glad we are getting to work together.
Amazing.
Yeah. I'd like to shout out Angela Yeager one more time again. She's truly put so much work into the semester, and I feel like it's just teachers like her who really empower students. And then also Redhouse Architecture that I mentioned earlier in the podcast, and then also Felina Selden of the Mayor's Office of Sustainability.
Gals, thank you so much for talking all things green with me today. I'm going to let the viewers know how they can stay in touch with us. If you'd like to stay connected with the show, be sure to follow us on TikTok at ATG Show and check out our YouTube channel, All Things Green Show. You can find all of our sources from today's episode in our show notes. All Things Green will be back in 2 weeks. Thank you so much for being a part of the global sustainability movement.